Brought to you by Penguin.
Churchill's Killing House. Written and read by me, Monty Halls. For Ford Hallam, who, with his energy, humour, wisdom, and indefatigable will, was the embodiment of the commando spirit. There's a unique responsibility that comes with writing about individuals who were real, who lived and breathed, had families of their own and descendants who I know will pore over every word of these stories. This is absolutely as it should be, but is a formidable proposition when committing pen to paper. Much of the pressure lies in bringing those who created the Killing House to life, of making them flesh and blood. This requires going beyond the dry notes of history and the sepia images of printed records, and therein lies the challenge. But within that challenge lies great joy. As I read the various accounts, diaries, and official records of these turbulent times, a fuller picture began to emerge. And it was a picture of the personalities of these men and the lives they led within and outside the military. They all seemed so likeable, so understated, genuinely funny, wry, and, of course, absurdly brave. In short, they were great characters, a gift for me as I tried to narrate this story and bring it alive. But there was a juxtaposition here. They achieved remarkable things, and yet so many facets of their lives were so very ordinary, based on simple decency mixed with a potent desire to do the right thing. They were simply a group of young men in a certain time, at a certain place, who became caught up in the maelstrom of war. They made the decision to step forward, to walk towards danger. While exploring their stories, more and more I began to like them as individuals and see their reflections in the commandos that I was lucky enough to serve with during my own brief and thoroughly unremarkable military career. The men who created the Killing House and went on to form and lead their own commando units were such good company. Much of this feeling of association stems from using, in the main, their autobiographies as my reference material. There is simply no better record of these times and their exploits than the words of the men themselves. An unfortunate downside of this is varying and frequently contradictory accounts of raids, of battles, and of the training itself. Inevitably, some discrepancies exist between one set of recollections of an event and another. Given the circumstances, one can hardly blame those involved. So I've done my best to find the middle ground, seeking the dates, facts, and figures that match with official records. This book focuses on the significance of the activities within Inverloch House, the Killing House, and how pivotal the syllabus developed there was to the raising of the commandos. The story then moves on to the first shambolic commando raids, the audacity and impact of subsequent operations, and the men who made up their number. The DNA of the training begun at Inverloch was braided into every commando unit and every man that served. Certain traits and characteristics, and indeed a wider ethos, continue to be reflected in the organisation today. I lost count of the number of times I exclaimed out loud, "Aha, that's why we do that." I have steered clear of telling the tale of the Special Operations Executive, SOE, for whom Inverloch and nearby Arizegh House were so very significant. Many hundreds of agents were trained within the confines of the houses, their grounds, and on the nearby coastline, and that story has been covered in a number of excellent books. The period this story covers was a dark time indeed. Britain was a vanquished nation. Our heavy weaponry lay scattered on the beaches of Dunkirk, and our perceived birthright as a great military power was rendered meaningless in the face of blitzkrieg. Our status was simply that of an island off the coast of Europe awaiting invasion. But something remarkable happened in Inverleith House, something that changed the way we took the fight to the enemy. As William Fairbairn noted, some of you may think this is not cricket, but may I remind you that Hitler does not play the game. The tale of how this new type of fighting came about, and with it a new breed of soldier, is the one I have attempted to tell here. The original commando units were, of course, simply part of a wider war effort, and by no means won the conflict single-handed. But they did create something unique. They struck the first retaliatory blows on a previously invincible German war machine, and helped turn the tide of the conflict. There is a danger of romanticising this story, of painting a picture of renegades and rogues running amok, wreaking havoc and then returning home to universal acclaim. The reality of war is entirely different. The instructors in the Killing House relied on discipline, unity, strength and focus. In their work, they were deadly serious, anything but loose cannons. This was reflected in the commando syllabus they created. The young men who undertook that training went on to die in their droves, or received life-altering physical and mental injuries. To see this tale as one of a great, joyous adventure does all of them a disservice. Their initiative was limitless, their achievements historic, and their sacrifice immense. I have tried to put flesh on the bones, doing what I can to make these men and women real. That has been the hardest task of all. By trying to bring them to life, at times I've had to imagine what they felt, what they wore, their facial expressions, and to break down their actions into something human. This has, by necessity, meant going beyond the series of dates and locations that typify many historical records. It is worth noting in this context that, except on a few occasions, the words they speak in this book are drawn directly from their autobiographies and war diaries. I fervently hope that in this process I've done them justice, but any errors or unnecessary extrapolations are mine alone. Prologue. The course had somehow managed to cram into the main lobby of Inverleith House, but it was a tight squeeze. 30 in number and drawn from a variety of army units, they now stood shoulder to shoulder, creating an anticipatory fug of muttered exchanges, shuffling feet, and milling khaki. They had been given no further instructions or information beyond this first simple edict: be in the main hall, at the foot of the stairs, at the start of the working day. Late July on the west coast of Scotland is characterised by the sun making its appearance in the small hours of the morning, drifting slowly across the sky and dipping below the horizon late in the night. This meant that it had already been light for several hours, and the vast majority of the men in the group had slept badly in their makeshift accommodation in the grounds, despite their long journeys from all corners of the nation. Nonetheless, adrenaline had combined with anticipation on this, their first day of 6 weeks at the Special Training Centre, and the tension in the room was palpable. To a man, the group were young, in their late teens or early 20s. They were fit, and they had all volunteered for duties beyond the standard training routines and defensive rotas that characterised an army braced for invasion. The nature of these duties was, as yet, unclear to them. Despite the scale of the main house, the lobby itself was not a large space, a measure of the original status of Inverleith as a hunting lodge. Functional and unremarkable, the staircase was far from a grand baronial sweep to the upper floors. It ran down one wall and was wide enough for 2 people to descend side by side, with one giving way to the other for the final steps. At the foot of the staircase was a right angle, with the last 3 steps leading to the floor of the lobby. This was covered by a threadbare rug on which the men were now gathered. Lieutenant Henry Hall of the 4th Dorsets found himself at the bottom of these stairs, pressed to the margins of the room by the milling throng. As he looked over the
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.